Accessing peace. Existing without violence, with the ability to calmly resolve conflict. Downloading love. An overwhelming, deep, positive affection towards others. Activating liberty. Living your life as you see fit without infringing on the lives of others.
Welcome to Peace, Love, Liberty Radio. Online at fppradio.com. I am your host, Darryl W. Harry, the Liberty Penguin, the Wombat, the uncut cocaine of libertarianism, here for an Ask Me Anything. That's right, it's Friday. That means I answer your questions. Before I get into the questions, I've got a couple of thoughts and some updates and stories that I want to share because, well, it's my show and I kind of get to, do what I want, right? Right? Yeah, kind of. Now, I've set some ground rules for myself, and then there's other rules that I voluntarily agree to, such as for inclusion on iHeartRadio, specifically the app. I'm not on broadcast radio that I'm aware of. There might be a station here or there taking the show. I don't really know. But for, the app, the iHeartRadio app, there are certain guidelines that one agrees to, and one of them is to be radio friendly. So I've sort of, put that upon myself. So no F-bombs, no foul language. So, that's one of the sort of rules that I agree to. But otherwise, I've got the show description, and I try to somewhat stay within that. But occasionally, I do decide that, they're just things that I want to say. And no, you might be thinking, Darryl's going to get into the LP drama. No, Darryl's not getting into the LP drama. Just Darryl feels like sharing some personal experiences because that's what Darryl does occasionally. And yes, you will notice that I'm referring to myself in third person because that's, what Darryl does occasionally. And you would do it too if you could. You just wish you were as cool as I am. All right, so sarcasm aside, the episode this past Monday was what I hope to be the last sort of refeed episode. And what was going on Monday that I could not be in studio to record a show? Well, on Monday, I did something that I had never done before. I completed a half marathon. Now, I believe I had talked about this a little bit, and my goal was, I had two goals. One was to finish. And the second goal was to finish in 2 hours and 30 minutes. And I completed one of those goals. I finished, and if it wasn't for having to take a pee break in the middle of the race, and also twice during the race getting some fluids in me, I would have finished in under 2.5 hours. I finished in 2 hours, 31 minutes, and 56 seconds. But with that said, I found out some really interesting information. And I found out that apparently there is a process where someone can wind up collecting money for a charity in order to run the New York City Marathon. Now, I believe I've talked before about, one of the things that I want to do at some point in my life is to run a marathon. And in talking with some people before the race on Monday, I was talking to a couple people that had run that New York City Marathon. And I was like, you know what? I think that would be really neat. And I know that there's a lottery that you can enter. And somebody said, well, there's also a way that you can raise money for charity. And I was like, wow, that's really, really cool. And Monday, I was just totally exhausted after the race. And Tuesday, I was busy at the State House all day. And Wednesday, I finally had time to think. And so I started looking into who were some of the charities that I could possibly wind up raising money for. And I found a charity that I wish that I could donate more money to. That would be the Innocence Project. And they're one of the charities that has some spots for the New York City Marathon. And so I then applied. And unfortunately, their team for this year is full. But I have asked if they will inform me as soon as they begin accepting applications for 2018. And it is going on my goal list to be on Team Innocence Project for the New York City Marathon for 2018. And I will, if I'm on their team, then, obviously I have to meet the fundraising goal, which is about $3,500. And they're a just absolutely amazing charity. And I have no doubts at all that I'll be able to raise the money to be able to compete on that team. So I'm saying it here and now publicly. That is one of my goals for next year. And I've also found that there's a half marathon in Portland, Maine coming up in July that I believe I will be registering for because, I've been a sports kind of guy my entire life, and I got out of shape for a long time, but now I'm probably in better shape now than I was when I was in high school. And I enjoy the meeting of the people at the various races and the, doing the activities and staying in shape and having fun doing it. So that is sort of my rant. That's not really a rant. And also, before I forget, since I did mention about, I had time to think on Wednesday. And I had previously been doing shows Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and then at the beginning of this year, basically, I cut out that Wednesday show because of politics stuff. I've decided I'm not bringing back the Wednesday show. Now, I might occasionally wind up doing a special episode on a Wednesday. No guarantees of that. If I do, it will not be in the format of the regular show. It will be, separate numbering under special episodes. May or may not happen. I don't know. I enjoy sort of having, quote unquote, free time where I'm not working or doing something related to work. And yes, this, as weird as it sounds, this kind of is work. And so I put this in that working category. So I might just wind up, letting myself have some time to relax on Wednesdays. Stay tuned. I'll answer your questions next.
In 2115 New England, there are no borders, no states, and no regulations, yet never has a more peaceful and prosperous place existed. But Mr. Drake's security company has seen better days. Faced with the prospect of waning power, Mr. Drake intends to replace the anarchy of New England with a government. But at what cost? Will anybody care? And can anyone stop him? Anarchy in New England by Joe Jarvis is available from Amazon.com and all major bookstores.
Are you tired of governments murdering people around the world? Stop using their money. There is an alternative. Bitcoin is a stateless, free market, non-political currency. Bitcoin cannot be inflated or controlled by any government. By using their money, you are helping the state. Stop doing it. You have an incredible alternative available now. Learn it, use it, spread it. Get started with Bitcoin at weusecoins.com. That's weusecoins.com.
You're listening to Peace, Love, Liberty Radio, online at fppradio.com.
Welcome back to Peace, Love, Liberty Radio, online at fppradio.com. Before I get into answering your questions, I have a question for you. Are you an advocate for free market money? Do you promote cryptocurrencies as an alternative to the fiat-centric government-issued stuff? If so, then you need SpendABit in your arsenal. It's the search engine for things you can buy with Bitcoin and other virtual currencies. SpendABit has aggregated more than 3 million products from thousands of Bitcoin-enabled merchants. Keep your money in the free economy. Spend a bit. Use my affiliate link, spendabit.fppradio.com. And if you're a Bitcoin accepting merchant, ask about their merchant suite to reach even more customers. That's spendabit.fppradio.com. Now, into the questions. And the first is actually a three-parter here, I believe. If taxation is theft, then are free government services charity? As a libertarian, how do you justify using free government services? What method do libertarians propose to avoid the tragedy of the commons in a free society? So question number one here, or rather the first part of the question. If taxation is theft, taxation is theft because you're taking something that does, and by you, I mean the government agent, is taking something that does not belong to them, and then they're making it theirs. That is theft. If I come over to your house and say, I am appropriating your toaster, have I stolen your toaster? Yes, I have. If I then donate the toaster to someone without a toaster, then have you committed an act of charity? No, you have not. You were robbed, and it doesn't make the thief a charitable person because he did something good with it. Question number two, as a libertarian, how do you justify using free government services? I don't. Now, I understand that there's an argument, and that's sort of the extent of the thing here. There's an argument. I understand that such argument exists. I don't agree with the argument. But the argument is that libertarians should wind up taking all of the free stuff that they can from government because that will eventually cause the collapse of the government. I disagree with that. And I'm not going to try to give you the justifications that the people that advocate for that have, because I don't believe that their justification is very good, because, again, I don't believe it to be accurate. The third part here is, what method do libertarians propose to avoid the tragedy of the commons in a free society? And, well, quite simply, libertarians propose not having a commons. And what do I mean by that? Now, some people might think, you just don't want anybody to be able to, have a town square. Well, no, there are privately owned parks that are open to the public. The difference is there is someone that is responsible for maintaining said park. The very first Occupy protest in New York City were actually held not in a public park. It was a private park that was open to the public. The difference being who actually owns the land. Now, there's a park right down the street from where I live that is a quote-unquote public park. It's owned by the city of Keene, New Hampshire. Now, the difference between that and I forget the name of the park in New York that was open to the public that the occupiers wound up going to, is that park had a private owner. So it wasn't this, government, everybody owns the park sort of thing. There was one entity that said, we own the park, we are responsible for this park. With government land, the theory and the claim is that everybody owns the land. And when everybody owns the land, then supposedly everybody is responsible, but what winds up happening, and I'm really sort of explaining what tragedy of the commons is here, what winds up happening is everybody thinks, well, I'm not responsible for it, somebody else is. And then somebody else winds up having to clean up everybody's mess. But generally what happens in a tragedy of the commons thing is nobody starts the cleanup process, and then you wind up having a mess. So the way libertarians propose avoiding that tragedy of the commons, again, is to not have anything that is susceptible to the tragedy of the commons. Now, some people would say, well, McDonald's kind of, to some extent, has a tragedy of the commons, to where not everybody takes their tray to the garbage when they're done. Yeah, and again, McDonald's is a private business, so someone is paid to clean up after the customers that might not clean up after themselves. If McDonald's were run by the government and it was open to the public and anybody can do anything, then in theory there might be a maintenance guy. Again, in theory, there's no guarantee. Again, for a lot of public parks, there might not be somebody that is, the maintenance guy for that specific park, especially in smaller towns. So that's where the tragedy of the commons sort of comes in. Or you also see this in overfishing, to where you've got a lake that is, quote unquote, owned by everybody. And, well, because nobody is necessarily the owner of the lake, then everybody thinks, well, I can take as many fish out of this lake as I want. Or what happens with deep-sea ocean fishing, and I've covered this on the show previously, how the quotas wind up actually encouraging overfishing, to where people will catch as many fish as possible, and then they wait until they're almost back at shore before they go through and throw out the fish that don't meet whatever the length size. And, well, they're already dead by that time. So, yeah, that's where the tragedy of the commons comes in. Stay tuned. There are more questions here on the Ask Me Anything episode of Peace, Love, Liberty Radio.
Are you sick of government lackeys who say you didn't build that? Are you tired of elitists who think you need a government permission slip for everything? Everything you do is an A to B conversation, and the government should see their way out of it. Create true free markets by adopting the BIPCOT No Government License. The BIPCOT No Gov license allows use or modification of any product, service, or software except by governments or government agents. Go to BIPCOT.org. That's Bravo, India, Papa, Charlie, Oscar, Tango.org.
Bitcoin Not Bombs is a launching pad for nonprofits and social entrepreneurs into the financial freedom of the Bitcoin economy. Bitcoin Not Bombs offers premium publicity campaigns designed to facilitate an organization's adoption of Bitcoin as a payment system. Bitcoin Not Bombs is fully committed to being the hub of the nonprofit sector of the Bitcoin economy, maximizing the potential cross-promotion of all our clients and commercial partners. To learn more, visit bitcoinnotbombs.com.
Hi, this is Roger Paxton from the Lava Flow Podcast, the Free Coast Freecast, and Pax Libertas Productions, and you're listening to Peace, Love, Liberty Radio with Darryl W. Perry.
Hey, welcome back to Peace, Love, Liberty Radio, online at fppradio.com. I am your host, Darryl W. Perry, the Liberty Penguin, the Wombat, the uncut cocaine of libertarianism. And before I continue with the questions, I want to make sure that I tell you about Roberts and Roberts Brokerage. They've been around for 40 years. That's longer than I've been alive. Not a lot longer than I've been alive, but longer than I've been alive nonetheless. They've been around since 1977. I've only been around since 1978. And I'm talking about Roberts and Roberts Brokerage. They've been a trusted source for 40 years, a trusted source for buying and selling precious metals like gold and silver. They also take Bitcoin and other virtual currencies for precious metal purchases and have permanently removed the minimum purchase amount for all orders paid in the digital currency. So call Roberts and Roberts Brokerage today for knowledgeable advice on buying and selling precious metals and a forward-thinking approach to new technologies. 800-874-9760. That's 800-874-9760. Or visit them online at rrbi.co. That's rrbi.co. Continuing now with the questions, because, again, it is the Ask Me Anything episode, where you can ask me anything and I will answer. It might not be the answer you want. It might not be an answer that you like, but it will be an answer nonetheless. ama.fppradio.com. You can fill out that form and submit your questions anonymously if you want, or you can let me know who you are. That is your choice. ama.fppradio.com. Question. Hi, Darryl. I understand that you've probably been asked this a number of times, but with nearly every political party in some form of trouble between leaks, investigations, and, of course, the mass surveillance state in which we live, is there any nonviolent way to have, for the lack of a better term, a vote of no confidence on the current system? Now, of course, the day after would be a matter of debate, but can we, the citizens, hold our own Brexit from what would be described as tyrannical government bodies? And then he goes on with some background about himself, and I just want to share one more part of what he sent me before I get to answering the questions. He says, I found my path to liberty shortly after 9/11 when my family jumped on the turn the Middle East into a sheet of glass bandwagon, and I realized almost no one in elected office wanted a peaceful, intelligent world. I'd like to see that in my lifetime. That and maybe a private flight to Mars. That would be awesome. So before I answer the questions, I too want a private flight to Mars, and I really left that in there just so I could make that statement. One of my friends on Facebook a couple days ago said, if you could go to 3 places before you die, where would they be? And I've got a very simple answer. Now, a lot of the people were saying like Machu Picchu, the Great Wall of China, the Taj Mahal, the Colosseum in Rome, and just naming, very specific. And of course, like coming up with only 3 of those things, very difficult. So I found a loophole. I did. I found a loophole in the question. It said name 3 places. I said everywhere on Earth. That's one place. Everywhere on Earth. I want to go to all of the places. I also want to go to the moon, and I want to go to Mars. Now, chances are I will never meet those 3 goals. I might meet 1 or 2 of them, but probably not all 3, and that's fine. But, have big dreams, right? So I just thought it was very interesting that I mentioned, wanting to go to Mars earlier this week on Facebook, and this person, as far as I know, is not one of my Facebook friends, so I don't think he saw that. So just a little bit of, serendipity, if you will. So back to the question. Is there a way to have a vote of no confidence on the current system? Well, yes and no. Why do I say yes and no? And I realize that's another question and not the question that was asked, but that's fine because I kind of make up the rules as I go along, right? Yes. Yes, I do. So yes and no. You can have a vote. The question is whether or not anyone would view the vote as quote-unquote legitimate. Now, I want to remind you of a vote that happened about 241 years ago. Coming up in just a couple of weeks, it'll be 241 years, where there was basically a vote of no confidence on this tyrant by the name of King George III. Yeah, that's right. The Declaration of Independence was a vote of no confidence on the British monarch by the people that attended the Continental Congress. That was a vote of no confidence. King George didn't recognize it as a valid vote. But the question wasn't, is there a way to have a vote of no confidence that the current system would recognize? It just said, is there a way to have a vote of no confidence? Yeah, you could organize a vote, but just, be aware it might not be recognized by anyone. Then, of course, the next part would be a matter of debate. But could we have our own Brexit from what some would describe as a tyrannical government body? I will continue my answer here in the closing moments of peace. Love Liberty Radio, online at fppradio.com.
Coinbase is a simple and secure online Bitcoin wallet for sending, receiving, and storing Bitcoin. Coinbase also allows you to buy and sell Bitcoin using a bank account or use their tools to accept Bitcoin as a merchant. Coinbase has more than 1 million consumer wallets and is trusted by over 25,000 merchants, including Overstock.com, Khan Academy, Reddit, and of course, FPP. Get started at coinbase.fppradio.com. You can support FPP Radio by joining the Fans program. Fans are friends, allies, and numerous supporters. Fans help FPP afford to produce more original content. You can join the Fans program for as little as $1 per month through Patreon and get perks like ad-free versions of FPP Radio News and Peace, Love, Liberty Radio. To learn more or to join the Fans program, visit fans.fppradio.com. That's fans.fppradio.com.
You're listening to Peace, Love, Liberty Radio with Darryl W. Perry.
Welcome back to Peace, Love, Liberty Radio, online at fppradio.com. Could we, the citizens, hold our own Brexit from what some describe as a tyrannical government body? And again, this is basically a rephrasing of that initial part of the question of, can we have a vote of no confidence on the current system? Now, some would say you have a chance to have that vote of no confidence every 2 or 4 years. You can vote out your member of Congress. You can vote in a new president. That works in theory. And I say that works in theory because we know that approximately 90% of the members of Congress that run for re-election are going to get re-elected. We know that even those that wind up not getting re-elected, they just get replaced by another member of the duopoly. They get replaced. You replace one tyrant for another tyrant. And that's not really an actual vote of no confidence. A vote of no confidence is something that exists in parliamentary forms of government, to where the parliament gets together and they actually have a vote of no confidence where they say, we are no longer confident with this person as the prime minister and we are dissolving this parliament. Now, some people wind up looking at, they just dissolved parliament. Yeah, that doesn't mean that their central government went away. It just means that they're no longer organized in this legislative capacity. The central government still exists. There's still the king or the queen or whatever other sort of system exists. And I believe there are a few countries that have a president and a parliament. And it doesn't mean that the president goes away. It doesn't mean that there's no powers at that federal or national level. It just means that the parliament is no longer organized. And then they have another election, and then they organize another parliament. So again, I'll just throw back to when the Continental Congress voted on the Declaration of Independence. That was essentially a vote of no confidence. And something could, again, happen. The question is whether or not FedGov would wind up recognizing that as valid, and I don't think they would. But you know what? It's definitely worth a shot. And I know that there's a movement in California to have what some are calling a Cal exit. I prefer to call it a Cal leave-fornia. And I'm definitely in favor because, well, when I ran for president, that was one of my platform planks of every state should be able to leave the union if they want. That's it for this episode of the Ask Me Anything. Don't forget, every Friday I answer your questions. Send those over ama.fppradio.com.
The podcasts of FPP Radio are licensed under Copy Heart. We believe that copying is a form of flattery and do not abide by the copyright laws. Those laws serve to restrict the flow of ideas which no one can really own. Copying is an act of love. Love is not subject to law. If you enjoy the show, consider joining the Fans program and get perks like ad-free versions of Peace, Love, Liberty Radio and FPP Radio News, and also get a copy of the monthly newspaper FPP News. To learn more or to join the Fans program, visit fans.fppradio.com.